BIZCHAT with Staples Business Advantage, practical advice and ideas to help your organization. Welcome to this episode of BIZCHAT Podcast. I'm Karen Plutro. In this podcast, we will discuss the importance of health and safety in the school environment and what we have learned from this pandemic as schools put new procedures in place as students return to school. We will also discuss the importance of safety and hygiene practices and how these practices must be considered when preparing for the school year ahead. Joining us today in this podcast is Christine Bradley, President of Medland Alliance. Christine's experience and insight span over decades of previous pandemics such as SARS and H1N1 and in various sectors including healthcare, education, retail, government, and the film industry. We also have Brian Moores, Plant Operations Supervisor at Trillium Lakelands District School Board. Brian has 33 years in the industry, beginning as a custodian and eventually retiring as an operations supervisor. We also have Anand Ramakrishnan, Corporate Account Manager, Office Channel for North America at Cascades. Anand is a subject matter expert in the realm of janitorial and cleaning supplies with over 10 years of experience in the industry. And lastly, we have Andrew Raguse, a vertical sales leader for facilities with a focus on the educational vertical from Staples Business Advantage. Hi, everyone. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody for being on the BizChat podcast today. So many questions I'd like to ask, so let's get right to it. This question is for Andrew. What are the steps schools need to consider prior to having students return, whenever that may be?
Thank you, Karen. It's a pleasure to be here today. That is a great question. I speak to a lot of people in education, from teachers, students, people in facility services, and that is like really the big question on everyone's mind. It's really working together within the school environment and trying to figure out this return to school problem. So instead of thinking of discrete steps, it's more valuable to discuss some of the experience and conversations we've had at Staples within the education world. And I would say there's probably like four things schools need to consider when having students return. So the first one is social distancing. So this is one of the more challenging things to address. It's keeping staff and students, children, at least 6 feet apart. As most of you know, COVID-19 is principally spread through respiratory droplets that distribute in the air when we sneeze, cough, and breathe. So we need to stay socially distant, and that's very challenging with children in the education setting, mostly because children don't listen, as we all know, and special considerations need to take place. So schools are looking at, utilizing floor and wall decals, reorganizing classroom furniture in the washroom, in the classroom, reorganizing space and play area, really deconstructing the entire classroom that has been with us like pretty much forever. So it's very challenging, and I would say it's kind of the hardest thing, in my opinion, and what I'm hearing, to kind of figure out. The second thing is hand hygiene. Hand hygiene is one of the most important things to do to help stop the spread of COVID-19. Health Canada, CDC, and every health regulation says, wash your hands for at least 20 seconds with soap and water. Look at hand sanitizer as well. So compliance is going to be something to think about, getting people to utilize our hand hygiene programs once we implement them. And then just quickly, the last two things, touch point reduction, enhanced cleaning and disinfection. We want to clean more and we want to disinfect more. This is particularly important in the education space because kids touch a lot of stuff and they are touching their face often. It's very hard for them to have the discipline not to. And a lot of decisions are being made in many schools on cleaning and disinfection protocols. And then finally, simply protecting students and staff, mostly staff and frontline workers, with appropriate personal protective equipment, PPE. So sourcing the masks, the gloves, the coveralls, everything we need to protect our workers.
4 steps. That was a long answer.
It was, and that's going to be the longest one. Everything will be much shorter after that, I promise you. So.
All right. Brian, this one is for you. What are the hurdles and challenges educators and facilities are facing when preparing their facilities to get back to the school year?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's all new to everyone. We were a little bit ahead of the curve because we started disinfecting and sanitizing touch points back in January. We would do that once a week just to be a little ahead of it. But I think that's going to be the new norm. Classroom sizes are going to change, obviously. There's a lot of things that we have to take into consideration. Does every classroom have a sink and water with soap? Most do, but some don't. Art rooms do. Maybe a regular classroom doesn't in this new age. But, when the kids do come in, how many per classroom? How many staff do we need on hand? Usually there's one person at an elementary school during the day. Do we need two now because we're going to be hitting those touch point areas more often? We're going to be sanitizing and disinfecting other areas more often. The possibility of sanitizing, disinfecting elementary school desks 2 to 3 times a day as opposed to once a day. So there is some challenges for it coming up. And I guess we're just going to have to take it as it comes.
Yeah, great answer. Andrew, what's your perspective?
Yeah, guys like Brian and custodial cleaning staff, it is going to be, I think, quite a test. And you just kind of draw on your experience and you work with your team and whatever internal committees you're working with, you try to come up with the best policy following guidelines. I would say another thing to one of the challenges educators, facility managers face when preparing their facilities is probably like some supply chain issues. It's really hard to get stuff. It's hard to get cleaning supplies. It's hard to get disinfectant. It's hard to get hand soap and hand sanitizer. So, I think supply chain issues are going to be something that people are going to have to deal with more often.
Okay. Christine, the next question is for you that you're going to start it off. What considerations should school cleaning staff take for hand hygiene programs? What's your thought?
So first and foremost, make sure all of your soap dispensers are operational. That you have adequate supply of your soap dispensers. Have a product people like using. That's another key component. I actually have shared the story recently about when we first launched foam soap to the market. And I had a school board in the Kingston area that were trialing it. And I got a call to go out and talk to them because they felt that they were going through too much product. And I went out and I spoke with the custodial staff and they said, well, it's actually not that they're going through too much product. It's the kids really like it and they seem to play with it. And I was like, well, isn't that a good thing? And it really is. And they seem to enjoy washing their hands with foam soap. So, that's something to keep in mind. Make sure you've got hand sanitizer available in the classrooms for the teachers, maybe something tucked in their desks, in hallways, outside washrooms, any cafeteria areas, stands at entrances are really important. And, I do know it's an issue in schools where you don't always have a sink with running water and soap and paper towel. Perhaps consider a portable sink in areas where you don't have the ability to wash hands. So those are some considerations from a hand hygiene perspective, and make sure you're getting a quality product that you is reputable. I would also say that and encourage that.
Yeah, very important. Anand, what are your thoughts?
Extending on Christine's answer, she was right about the soap and the sanitizer and the towel part of it. And what we need to try and do along with that is to reduce the touch points, the physical touch points, which Andrew was talking about earlier. Because the more the touch points, the more the chances of germs getting onto your hands. So, trying to be doorless with washrooms or keeping faucets, touch-free, and, the list goes on. I know some of the schools, it might be, quite a drastic change in infrastructure to achieve these doorless, touch-free, and all that stuff. in that case, there are other simple fixes like, probably giving towels to open the doors. And there are many other more economical choices to reduce the number of physical touch points. So, bottom line is trying to stop cross-contamination or getting germs from one surface to another.
Interesting. And Brian, this one's for you. What is your feeling, or how have the expectations changed for facility occupants?
They want to be assured that you are taking all the steps that you need to take with hand sanitizing, making that available for them, having all the instructions ready for them, even warning labels, have the SDS sheets on hand, that type of thing, and walking into an environment that is safe, because you're keeping records, disinfecting and sanitizing, and like you say, you just got to make sure you got enough of that stuff on hand, so you got to deal with your suppliers constantly.
Yes, absolutely. And Christine, I wanted to understand your point of view on this. Is hand washing effective against viruses and COVID-19?
Yeah. And, if you look to any of the governing bodies, whether it's World Health Organization, Center for Disease Control, Health Canada, even our regional health departments, the number one thing you can do is wash your hands regularly and either kill the bacteria or kill the virus with hand sanitizer, or remove the virus with hand washing, vigorous hand washing, and make sure you're washing your hands long enough. Sometimes, we like to take shortcuts, and you always have to remember you're supposed to sing happy birthday to yourself twice.
Oh, really?
So I know there's a lot of things there's a lot of great songs on YouTube now and on Instagram that encourage people to wash their hands longer. So.
Okay. And what are the best practices for schools to adopt to ensure students and facilities, faculty are washing hands effectively? Christine, Andrew, I don't know who one of you can answer that question.
I could take a stab at that. So there are a lot of best practices. Probably the first thing you should do is reach out to your local health unit. So schools are trying to establish a program, a product, a new soap dispenser. The first thing you should do is go to your local health unit and find out what their regulations are. That's the base standards, and that's the best way to cover yourself. I think good communication with teachers and staff on hand washing protocol, communication, ensuring that that guidance is kind of properly understood by health and safety, teachers, and staff. But supervising and helping others learn good hand washing methods is probably important, because at the end of the day, we're looking after children. Advocating, providing easy accessible hand washing sinks and hand washing products, like Christine said, and actually advocating for warm water too, because I know sometimes sinks, the default setting is to put it on cold, but children don't like cold water, so they tend to stay away. If you kind of make everything like warm water, it just provides more of a comfortable environment for students to wash your hands, and you get better hand washing compliance.
Okay. Anand and Christine, this one is for you. We can start with Anand. How is hand washing and drying important to preventing the spread of bacteria? And then the second part of the question is, in regard to hand drying, do you see any benefits using air dryers versus paper towels?
So like mentioned earlier, hand hygiene program, a complete hand hygiene program is inclusive of the 20 seconds washing with a proper soap, with, like Christine said, working soap dispensers. And to complete that regimen, you need to have a proper hand drying method. So there has always been this debate between paper towels versus dryers, but science has consistently shown us that, dryers are not that good in stopping the spread of pathogens. So effectively, when you have dryers running, there's a good chance that whatever is there in the washroom is being thrown around. So usually science mentions that paper towels are a way better method of hand drying in comparison to air dryers. It could be any hand dryers. And question some facility manager might have regarding this is, hey, is it environmentally responsible for me to be using a lot of paper towel? And the answer to that would be there are a lot of responsible choices in the market, meaning recycled towels and toilet paper. So a good research would give us that there are so many options in the market. And I would recommend going with an environmentally responsible choice when it comes to paper towels.
Okay, Christine.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with those statements, and I would also say that encouraging hand washing through signage is really important as well. And quite a few of the manufacturers that manufacture hand soap and sanitizer, they do offer signage. I know some companies even have curriculum based programming for teachers to pull it into the classroom as part of the curriculum. So, there's different ways of encouraging it. Tap into your resources with your partners and your manufacturers and the supply chain, and try and use some of those resources because they're out there.
Interesting. Very good point. All right, Christine, this is another question for you, two-part question. Are hand sanitizers safe to use in schools? Because I think that's a really important question to ask. And what is a good quality product? And then the second part of the question is, what could schools do to help with getting supply? What else can be done to satisfy this need if sanitizers are not available?
Okay. Yeah, they're, hand sanitizer is a great way to stop the spread of germs for sure when soap and water aren't available. But knowing what you're using is really important. There was a call out early in the pandemic declaration for breweries and alcohol manufacturers to start producing alcohol-based hand sanitizer, and it's really kind of confused people a little bit as to what it is. So you want to make sure that you're using an FDA or a food grade product. The alcohol in it should be at least 70% or higher, and it should be a food grade. So food grade is what you would find in vanilla extract. It's perfectly safe. There are some manufacturers that have had to drop down to a different grade that would be more of a cleaning grade, like isopropyl. So ask the questions, make sure you're with a quality manufacturer, make sure you have your SDS on site, your SDS sheets, and follow what your Board of Health is telling you as well. That was the answer to the first question, I think. Could you maybe help me again with that second one?
No problem. And what could schools do to help with getting supply? And what else can be done to satisfy this need if sanitizers are not available?
Yeah, so part of the reason for dropping down to a different grade of alcohol is because the supply chain. So we also are seeing supply chain issues with bottles and pumps. And, one of the things that was recommended a while ago was to make it a back to school product, to bring in a pump bottle from home and sterilize it in your dishwasher and bring it in just like you would your tissue and your pencils and your backpack on the first day, and have that as part of the program and get the buy-in from the children and the parents from home. I think that's really important to do as well, and it helps with some of the supply chain issues that we're seeing right now.
Perfect. Brian and Andrew, this question is for you. How have cleaning and disinfectant protocols changed in anticipation for return to school? How about we start with you, Brian?
Well, like I said earlier, we started sanitizing, disinfecting touch point areas more frequently. And that's been ramped up even more now with students coming back in to pick up their personal belongings and things out of their desks. And so you want to make sure all those touch points are taken care of. I think it's going to be a regular part of our cleaning program. Probably the most important part of our cleaning program, where some things are going to have to be left. Where, certain stock rooms, supply rooms, offices might not get a regular cleaning every day. They might have to go on the back burner while we make sure that we are sanitizing and disinfecting frequently upon the return of the kids.
Yeah, I got to agree. I got to agree with Brian's statement. I think there will be a greater emphasis on disinfection over cleaning. There's limited resources. There's a limited budget. Like I've heard that product budget for products may have gone up to reflect the increase in demand, but labor budgets are static. So there's going to be a choice that I think cleaning staff need to make over when it comes to cleaning, and just a greater use of disinfections and touch point reduction. And that's why it's important to pick the right disinfectant, because you want to ensure that that disinfectant has proper kill claims, and that that staff is properly trained on the use of the disinfectant. So that's going to help you with your program as you move forward. So I agree 100%. Definitely going to see stricter disinfection protocols.
Okay. I have been hearing a lot about electrostatic disinfectant disinfection technology. How can this be used in the school environment? Let's start with Andrew first.
Essentially, let's start by explaining what maybe electrostatic disinfection technology is quickly. So it's a device that creates a mist or atomization of a disinfectant cleaning solution, and that solution runs from a reservoir tank through a compressor or electrode, creates a very fine mist that is electrostatically charged. So there's a polarity between the mist and the surface, and the mist envelops the surface, because the surface is negatively charged, the mist is positively charged. And so you're actually able to get excellent coverage. So think of electrostatic disinfection as a spray bottle on steroids. And now you're going to be going into rooms disinfecting more frequently, and so it is, like as I mentioned, with that limited labor budget and those limited resources, it is a technology that I think is going to be really helpful for the schools. And if you can kind of think of like the kindergarten classroom and how many different like objects and pieces of furniture there are in there, I think it's going to be very helpful in hitting those disinfection protocols. And the thing with children is children like to touch things, so I think there's going to be more surfaces that need to be disinfected. And COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2 can last on a surface for about 3 days, maybe even a little bit more, depending on the actual surface itself. So I think there's a return on investment with the technology. I think if staff are properly trained on the technology, a school can be successful. But you really do need to do your homework. And I think you really need to work with your distributor rep to find out what's the best technology for your school, because there are a couple of options out there.
Okay, and Brian, what are your thoughts?
I think in certain environments in schools, it's very helpful, and it is the way of the future. But like was said earlier by Andrew, education's involved. So you have to work with the people, maybe at small groups at a time, trying it in schools, monitoring it in schools, making sure it's being used properly, make sure the work records are involved, make sure it's putting out the proper kill parts per million. If you want 200, 400, you got to make sure your mixtures are right. You still got to do dip tests, maybe, that type of thing. And like ionized water, it's invisible, so you don't really know if you're doing anything. So if it does break down, but it's still spraying a mist, is it still doing what it's supposed to do without regular checks? But again, that's education. And somebody in my business needs to know more about this and find out more. So he needs to contact Andrew and find out more about them.
Just if I can add one last thing to that. That's 100. You do like I said, you do need to do your due diligence and find the right technology for you. The 360 is a technology platform that's been out there, but we sell one called the Victory Sprayer. So each technology, Victory Sprayer, each technology has its own benefits. You gotta find the right tool that's going to work well for you and your staff. And like some experts do say that in order to achieve broad spectrum disinfection, you need to clean surfaces first.
Oh yeah.
So if you have a dirty surface, and then you haven't done your proper high touch point cleaning, and then you go ahead and start spraying the electrostatic disinfectant everywhere, thinking it's going to work, it's not going to work, because the surface is dirty, and that dirt on the surface is going to inactivate the disinfectant. So you're throwing your labor away, you're kind of throwing your money away on the disinfectant. So education is super important.
Okay. Christine, this one is for you. Health Canada has banned certain sanitizers. Can you explain why this might be happening?
Yeah, so I think I touched on that with the last question. There has been supply chain issues for the FDA grade or the food grade alcohol. And although the industrial/technical alcohol, which it's called, is effective against COVID-19, it's not what you'd want to use with children for sure, or anybody who's got an autoimmune issue or unexpected mother. So Health Canada has put warnings. There is a website. Anybody concerned with the product that they're using or have been using or maybe are about to procure, you can check on the website by manufacturer. And I would encourage anybody to do that, just on Health Canada.
That's a great point. Brian, this one is for you. What types of cleaning frequencies would you expect to see, and what critical touch points require extra attention?
Yeah, we've been hitting the touch points, but I think you're going to see it more often during the day. I think you're going to see if a child's in a classroom, you have 10 children in the classroom now, or that's what it's going to be. Somebody may not feel well and have to go down to an area where they can rest, or get a call home and say do we need to go in and sanitize that area and disinfect that area? I think you're going to see more frequencies in washrooms. You're going to be checking your soap dispensers a whole lot more. I think a lot of classrooms don't have paper towel dispensers and soap dispensers just because of cost. That's going to change. You're going to have every classroom with a soap dispenser and every classroom with a paper towel dispenser. So those are the things that you're going to have to keep on top of. And yeah, the frequencies of cleaning or disinfecting and sanitizing is going to probably double, if not triple.
Amazing. All right, and this is my last question. Andrew, this one is for you. What advice would you have for the education sector in planning for a reopening? And what items or timelines should be considered for sufficient ordering and equipping the facility?
I would, probably that's a great question, and I always say, like I said this before, follow the regulation, what your local health unit is saying, brush up on Health Canada standards. Internally, I would say for custodial staff or procurement staff, work with suppliers as early as possible. Work with your primary source, maybe find a secondary source, because sourcing things like PPE, disinfectants, it's going to be challenging. So you're going to have times when you can purchase goods and get product into the school, but then there may be a second wave, or there may be a large school board may feel like, oh, you know what, we need to buy a certain product and we need it now. So you're going to have some irregularity in the supply chain. So work with your supplier, find the best practice in sourcing products. One of the ideas that I've heard of school board is each school is going to have a dedicated area for pandemic supplies. So everything is sort of in that area, readily available, and it's separated from a lot of the other goods that a custodial team would want to use for cleaning. Us as distributors, we're working with manufacturers like Purell and Gojo and Cascades, and they've done an excellent job in educating us on the post COVID-19 environment. So have an open mind, learn, find best practices, work with your distributor rep, and definitely Staples Business Advantage is here for the education facility when it comes to reopening.
Great. Well, that was a great segue for me to say thank you all for joining the podcast today. There's been a lot of insightful information for those listeners that are looking to reopen schools, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.